Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. We are back at it with a Templar tank build for update 33, Ascending Tides. The Templar class is better than ever, with some nice improvements to some of the class skills, making the Templar tank more viable in group content. Whether this is in 4-man dungeons or being an off tank in a trial, I'm going to be trying something new for this video, as we will be trying to cover 2 builds in this video. One will be for you beginners out there that are new and may not have all the content unlocked. The other will be for higher CP that is aimed for trials and vet DLC dungeons. As per norm, we will be going over the stats, what skills I like to use, the passives that are essential for the build, what gear makes this build tick, and last, the CP setup. All of this is coming up next. Let us start this build video off into our character sheet. First, we're going to pop our potions to give us our stats. For the build, we have our max magicka sitting at 20,200, with max health sitting at 40,000, and max stamina at 23,900, almost to 24,000 there. Our magicka recovery goes up to 1,800, health recovery at 488, and stamina recovery at 668. For resistances, we can have that a little higher on the build by applying our restoring focus as such, with our spell resistance sitting at 27,400, physical resistance at 27,400 as well. For attributes on the build, we have 64 points into health. The reason for this is because some of our abilities are scaled off of max health. So the higher the health we have, the stronger the abilities would be. If you feel like that is a little bit too much health for you and you want more attributes point into magicka and stamina, you can do so and not put as much into health. On top of it, we can change some of our enchantments later on in the build to better balance this out for you as well. Now, for the Mundus Stone or the boon that we are running on the build, we are running the Atronach just to increase our magicka recovery by 310, due to the fact that we have quite a bit of abilities that are magicka cost based abilities, and that way just keep our magicka recovery up. As a tank, it's kind of nice to have that up higher. You can change this out for other ones that I will be listing as well, such as ones for max health if you want more health on your tank, max magicka if you want more magicka based ability casting, max stam, or more resistance as well if you so desire. Now let's go over into our skills. Now, before we get into it, just letting you know that the order I have my skills up here does not mean this is the only order that you need to put your skills in. I highly recommend put the skills in where it floats for you. Let's say if you do not prefer to have your taunt as your right bumper, but prefer to have it somewhere else, please do so. Make it simpler for you. This is just what works for me, and this is my type of flow on the build, so this is the way I do it. So let's start off with our first ability. Our first ability is in the Atrix Spear skill line. It is the 5th ability to unlock, starts off as Sun Shield. We then morph it to Radiant Ward. This grants us a damage shield for 6 seconds that is based off of our max health, so the higher health we have, the stronger this damage shield will be. Upon activating it, enemies within the area take magicka damage when the shield becomes active, and each enemy hit increases the shield strength by 20%. So what this means is the more enemies that we have around us, the stronger the shield is going to be, and we can almost possibly get an overshield. This is the strongest damage shield in the game, so I highly recommend it if you're going to play a Templar tank. This is a very vital part of the Templar tank, because this will help us survive a lot of fights by having a lot of damage shields on us. Next ability we have is down into the one-handed shield skill line. It is the 5th ability to unlock, starts off as Power Bash. We then morph it to Power Slam. This will deal some physical damage to enemies with our shield, but when we have this slotted, blocking any attacks grants us Resentment, which increases the damage of our next Power Slam cast within 10 seconds by 33%. So as a tank, we kind of have a little bit of DPS on our side. Not very high DPS, but a little bit of damage can go a long ways on killing bosses as well. Now, the main nice thing about this is also that this ability damage does consider as a bash damage, so it can interrupt enemies if they are casting or channeling abilities. This is something new for the Ascending Tides DLC. Now, what I want to talk about here as well is this will change if we are using our beginner tank setup. On our beginner tank setup, what we are doing here is actually still going to be in our one-handed shield skill line, but instead of our power slam, we are going to use our second ability to unlock. Starts off as a low slash, we then morph it to deep slash. This will deal some physical damage to enemies in the 6 meters around us. That will reduce the movement speed of all enemies hit by 30% for 4 seconds. What we also really like about this ability is that it afflicts each of the enemies hit with minor main, reducing their damage down by 5% for 12 seconds. So what makes this really nice is by reducing that damage by 5% to us, it also reduces their damage done to our DPS. So if we can't taunt everything, or if we have some stragglers that end up hitting our DPS, they won't hurt our DPS as hard. So keeping everybody alive a little bit easier. Now, next ability we have is up into the Restoring Light skill line. It is the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Healing Ritual. We then morph it to Ritual of Rebirth. This will heal us and nearby allies in the 10-meter radius for 6,000 health, just based off of what my stats are. And you can also heal a single ally outside of this 10 meters for an additional 6,200 health. Just keep in mind those health points are based off of where my stats are currently sitting. So it may change if you change some stats around. So why I decided to go with Ritual of Rebirth over, let's say, Honor the Dead or Rush Ceremony here is because this only affects either us or another ally. I do understand that if we do Honor the Dead or Breath of Life, that Breath of Life can hit us and another target, but the other target only gets half a health. So what I'm thinking about this is this can heal more than just us. It can heal up to several other targets within 10 meters. So we actually have more potence in this healing, so we actually can heal us and a lot more allies based off of Ritual Rebirth. Yes, I know it may cost a lot more, but that's where my thinking was, is I can end up healing a lot more people for just a little bit more of a cost compared to 4,100 magicka. I got 4,700 magicka here. Now, next ability we have is still in the Restoring Light skill line. It is the fifth ability to unlock. Starts off as Rune Focus. We then morph it to Restoring Focus. This gives us Meta Resolve for 20 seconds, which increases our physical and spell resistance. We really want to cast this is because we will also get 242 stamina every 1 second over the duration of 20 seconds to get back. This is very vital for a tank by getting stamina back as we block, because when you block in the game, you actually don't get any stamina back based off of your stamina recovery in your character sheet. So by blocking and having this laid out, we actually get some stam return, so that way we can maybe block a little bit longer duration, and we are going to be blocking a lot on this build. Now, if we also stand within that rune, we are also healing ourselves for 2,500 health every 1 second, which is also scaled off of our max health. Again, the higher health, the stronger this will be. Now, our next ability is down into the one-handed shield skill line. It is the first ability to unlock. Starts off as Puncture. We then morph it to Pierce Armor. This, we will hit an enemy with some physical damage and tell them to attack us for 15 seconds. This will be our taunt, and it will be our main taunt in the game that we want to use whenever we can. Now, the reason we want to use this taunt over any other taunt in the game is because we can inflict Minor Breach and Major Breach on an enemy that reduces their physical and spell resistance. Minor Breach is for 2,900 and Major Breach is the 5,900 for 15 seconds. Now, why is this really important? Every enemy in the game has 18,200 physical and spell resistance. The lower we get that number, the harder our DPS will be able to hit. Because pretty much you think of it as it's their armor. You're lowering their armor so your allies don't have to cut through as much armor is basically the way to look at it. So make sure to apply this when you can. Don't over taunt it, because if you over taunt them, then you're going to lose taunt, and then things ain't going to be good because you're probably going to lose a squishy DPS if the boss runs after them. So make sure to apply it when you're getting roughly about 3 seconds left on your taunt. Reapply it again. make sure to use this taunt as a priority over any other taunt in the game. Now for ultimate on this bar, we are going all the way down into our support skill line. With barrier, we end up morphing it to reviving barrier because this will protect ourselves and nearby group members within 12 meters with a ward that absorbs up to 25,200 damage for 30 seconds, which is really hefty and really nice to kind of give them pretty close to an overshield for them. But the main reason why we like to use this one is it will end up healing us and our group members for 12,300 health over 15 seconds based off of our stats that we have, which is kind of nice to just kind of help protect our allies a little bit more. We also like to slot this due to some of the passive bonuses that we get that we'll talk about later, but that is really nice just in case if someone's already popped an aggressive warhorn, this is a very good one to use, or in very stressful situations that you kind of need to keep everybody up and alive is a very good reason why to use barrier. Now some other good options to use if you don't have access to barrier yet or are still working on it but want some ultimate choices. The one that I like to use, or a couple of them that I like to use, is in the one-handed shield skill line. Starts off as shield wall, we then morph it to shield discipline. This will allow us to block all attacks for the next 8 seconds when we use it. We don't need a hold block, it will automatically block everything for us, which is really nice. I'm able to actually have done it a couple times, is pop this and actually get a res popped off, especially on a Templar since we have faster res speed, to actually get chain res the group to get everybody back into the fight. On top of it, what's really nice about this is our one-handed and shield abilities cost nothing while this effect persists. So if you need to heavy attack, get a heavy attack in because you're blocking everything right away. If you need a taunt, taunt's free now, and our void bash is now free to cast as our spammable with power slam. And yes, our power slam I will end up talking about later is there's a reason why we use power slam here as well. Next ultimate is a good one, is in the Restoring Light skill line. With the Rite of Passage, we then morphed it to Remembrance, because this will heal us and nearby allies for 6,400 health every 1 second for 4 seconds. Yes, I know 4 seconds ain't very much, but we like to have it because we gain major protection, reducing our damage taken by 10% for 10 seconds, which comes in very handy not to take as much damage. Now, you cannot move while channeling this, but we gain immunity to all disabling effects. I've also found if you actually roll dodge, you will actually stop healing your group members, but you will still get your major protection for the 10-second duration. Last ultimate I want to talk about is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. With Nova, then we morph it to Solar Disturbance, because this will deal some magic damage every 1 second for 10 seconds to enemies in the area. And each of those enemies then will have Major Main applied to them for 12 seconds, reducing their damage down by 10%, which again, like the Minor Main, is very significant to actually help us survive a lot easier. On top of it, enemies won't hurt our allies as much, so they can survive a lot easier, making our healer's job a lot easier for them. But what's really nice about this is we can apply a synergy for the group. When they activate it, they will deal some magic damage to all enemies in the area and can stun them for 3 seconds. So allies get resources back, enemies get stunned. It's a win-win for everybody all around. Okay, let's go talk about our back bar weapon setup. So for our first ability here, we are in the Adrix Spear skill line. With the fourth ability to unlock, starts off as Spear Shard. We then morph it to Illuminous Shards. This will send a spear down into a location, dealing some magic damage to enemies in the area. And then an additional magic damage every 1 second for 10 seconds, which is kind of nice to kind of add a little bit of that DPS, but we really like it because this is a synergy for a group member. So they can activate Holy Shard Synergy, which will restore 3,900 magicka and stam to the group member who activated the synergy. On top of it, their passives from the Undaunted skill line will give them those additional resources as well that we'll talk later in the passives, because we get some of those as well. Now, on our beginner tank setup, we will not be using Illuminous Shards. What we will end up using is our pull ability, which will be all the way down into the Fighters Guild skill line, which is the first ability to unlock, starts off as Silver Bolt. We then morph it to Silver Leash. This will end up pulling enemies to us, and we will deal some physical damage to them when we do this. and reduce their movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. So it's nice to kind of group adds with this. On top of it, we're going to kind of reduce their movement speed so they can't quite get away as fast. So that way they stay grouped a lot easier. So that way our DPS has one spot to focus to nuke down adds. Now, next ability we have is all the way up into our Destruction Staff skill line. It is the second ability to unlock, starts off as Wall Element. We then morph it to Elemental Blockade, which it will depend on what staff we are running. And since for this build we are running a Frost staff, it will be Blockade of Frost. So this will deal some frost damage to enemies in the target area every 1 second. Upon activating it, we will apply Frost Safeguard for 6 seconds to us and nearby allies that will absorb up to 10,600 damage from projectiles. So if you got melee fighters in range and they're attacking you while you have this shield up, it will not block any of that. It's only for those archers and pesky mages is what the damage shield will block. But it's quite nice to give to group members. On top of it, what the ice staff does for us is chilled enemies become frozen and are immobilized for 4 seconds. So this is a nice way to maybe get some enemies immobilized better for grouping on the build. Now, next ability we have is all the way down into the Assault skill line. It is the very first ability to unlock, starts off as Vigor. We then morph it to Echoing Vigor. This will end up letting out a battle cry for us and our allies around us to resolve and heal them for 9,600 health over 10 seconds. This is in a 15-meter radius, so we are doing now a lot of healing around us, as Echoing Vigor is up to 15 meters around us to heal us and allies. As we talked about on our first bar, Ritual of Rebirth heals us and allies in 10 meters. So we are doing a lot of healing, even though we are a tank. This is almost kind of becoming like a hybrid tank of a tank and healer. Now, next ability we have is all the way up into the Dawn's Wrath skill line. With it being the third ability to unlock, starts off as Backlash. We then morph it to Purifying Light. This will doom an enemy for over 6 seconds, dealing some magic damage to them and copying all their damage taken for the next 6 seconds, releasing 50% of it as additional magic damage to them. So we're kind of stacking damage to kind of burst damage some enemies, so almost kind of like what a DPS would do. But there's kind of reasons why we do it later on in passives. But for us, the max amount of damage we can copy is only 7,500. This is based off of our spell damage, so if you alter your spell damage in any way, this will change on your build. But for us, what's really nice about this, and what I like a little bit about it, is when the effect ends, allies near the enemy are healed for 1,500 health every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. So we have a lot of potential healing on the build, as I said a little bit earlier, kind of making this tank almost a hybrid between a tank and a healer, which was kind of the main scope I was kind of doing as an off-tank style. Now, next ability we have is all the way down into the Undaunted skill line. It is the third ability to unlock, starts off as Inner Fire. We then morph it to Inner Rage. This will deal some magical damage to the target that we end up taunting for 15 seconds. Or I should say, we'll deal the damage and then taunt them for 15 seconds. Now, what we really like about this is it's a range taunt. So we can use this up to 28 meters, so we don't have to run around the room chasing people to taunt them. We can taunt them at a distance, let them come to us, wait for the taunt to kind of get a little bit lower, more like down to like 7 seconds or 6 seconds left on the taunt, and then apply our Pierce Armor. But what we really like about this is also a synergy that allies can activate called Radiant Synergy that will deal some magic damage to that target over 3 seconds, and then an additional magical damage to them and other nearby allies. And this Radiant Synergy will only pop up for ranged allies, so people who are at a distance. Now, for our beginner tank setup, we won't be using actually Inner Rage. We will be using a different ability found all the way up into our Adric Spear skill line, which will be the third ability to unlock. Starts off as Focus Charge. We then morph it to Explosive Charge. This will impale all enemies within the area of 6 meters with some magic damage. Now, we like it for any enemy hit in the area that is casting. will be interrupted, set off balance, and then stun for 3 seconds. So we can kind of get rid of those channeling effects a little bit if you so desire by hitting this on those pesky mages. But again, like I said, how the build set up for a beginner, this will end up being our range taunt ability. Now for the ultimate on this bar, we are all the way down into the assault skill line. With Warhorn that we morph to aggressive Warhorn, this is just to increase our group's max magicka and max stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, which will increase their overall DPS for the group. On top of it, what we really like it for is the major force, increasing their critical damage done by 20% for the first 10 seconds of the ultimate cast. So they're going to hit a lot harder, so we're able to nuke down bosses a little bit faster with this being applied. So this will be kind of our main taunt or our main ultimate that we really want to use whenever we can. But again, if we are in a sticky situation, that's where I like to go with Reviving Barrier. Now we're going to go over the passives on the build. And for the passives here, I will only be covering the key passives for the build. I still highly recommend that we, or you, go over and read through each of your passives to better understand how they can help you on your build. Now we're going to start in the Adric Spear skill line. First one I like, and I think is very, very important for the build, is Spear Wall. This gives us minor protection for 6 seconds when we activate any skill within the skill line. Now this helps us survive a lot easier since we won't be taking as much damage, since it does give us minor protection. And the nice part about it, since it's like every 6 seconds, we do have our Radiant Ward here that lasts 6 seconds. So once you pop your Radiant Ward and know that, oh, your Radiant Ward has ended, that we're probably out of our minor protection. On top of it too, on our advanced tank setup, we actually have Luminous Shards, which is on the skill line as well, that we can actually pop on both bars. So we have on both bars options to pop our minor protection. Granted, Luminous Shards last a little bit longer. Next passive we want to talk about is Balanced Warrior. This gives us 6% more weapon and spell damage, but we really, care more about the physical and spell resistance that this gives us, since this will help us better protect ourselves and reduce some of the incoming damage, making us able to survive longer. Now over into the Dawn's Wrath skill line, the one I want to start off with is Prism. This will give us 3 ultimate every 6 seconds while we are in combat. So as in combat, and what I like about the skill that we use here, Purifying Light, we have here, it lasts 6 seconds. So whenever your Purifying Light is over, then you can recast it to get yourself more ultimate. That's kind of where I like to kind of set things up, so I know I'm always constantly getting ultimate on, so I can build for aggressive Warhorn. Now the next one I want to talk about here is Illuminate. When we cast any ability within the skill line, we give everyone minor sorcery for 20 seconds, which increases their spell damage by 10%. Now, if you have a magicka DPS or a healer that is a Templar within your group, they are more likely going to be casting skills within this skill line to provide this buff. So us being a tank, we won't need to really cast it as much. However, I still like casting our Purifying Light up here due to the fact that, we're going to end up stacking some damage, since that's what the ability does. It stacks some damage for us and then releases it after 6 seconds to give us a burst damage as a tank. We also are healing group members with it if they are within range of it. And as I stated before, some nice ulti gen for us as well. Now I want to also talk about last here is our Restoring Spirit, which reduces the cost of all of our abilities by 5%. This is quite significant in our sustain as a tank, as this will allow us to cast more abilities without recovering much, with like heavy attacks either from our getting magicka back from our Frost Staff or a heavy attack from our Sword Board for stamina. And since our abilities will now cost less, we are now allowed to block a little bit longer since they do cost less. Now over into the Restoring Light skill line, the one that I like here is Sacred Ground. This gives us minor mending for 4 seconds after leaving any cleansing ritual, rune focus, or rite of passage. This is actually quite nice for us since we will be wanting to stay in our rune, because this is what the one that will give us minor mending. We want to actually stay in our room to keep our heal over time that this provides to us. Now what this just did is just made that heal a lot stronger, and we can also, what also I guess Sacred Ground does is it also increases the amount of damage we can block by 10% for the duration there, so which helps us survive a little bit easier as well, since we're not taking as much damage there. Now over into the one-handed shield skill line. I want to start off with the sword and board, because this will give us 5% more damage, but what I really like about it is the amount of damage we can block by 20%, which will help with overall survivability because we're not taking as much. And now we're also stacking with our restoring focus if we're standing in that rune. Then the next one we have here is deflect bolts, which reduces damage from range and projectile attacks by 14%. This does stack with our sword and board passive as we just talked about, but in a different manner, so we won't take as much damage from archers and pesky mages out there, because this is based off of our mages for ranged attacks, and projectiles are from mages, is pretty much what it's describing. Now over into the destruction staff skill line. The one I like to talk about here is the elemental force. This increases the chance to apply the status effect by 100%. This does not mean that we have a guaranteed status effect every time we cast an ability, and for us it would be whenever we're casting our elemental blockade or elements of frost. Basically what this means is, so if we have like a 3% chance to apply the status effect originally what we were doing, instead of 3% it's now a 6% chance, and so on and so forth for whatever percent it actually is. And since we are using a frost staff, we'll actually go into our help menu just to kind of show you what it can actually provide. Over into combat here, down into status effects. For frost staff, it does instant damage, but it can apply minor main for 4 seconds, so reduces the enemy's damage by 5% for 4 seconds. But what we really like about it, if we are on our frost staff when we apply this status effect, we will then apply minor brittle for 4 seconds, increasing the critical damage that target takes, which is quite nice for our DPS to kind of burst down that target, especially if it's a boss, to kind of burst them down a little bit quicker there. Now we're going to go over back into our passives. Going over into the armor. Here I'm just basically just going to describe some of the passives since we are only using heavy armor on this build. Yes, no light, no medium, so it's all heavy armor here. So in the heavy armor skill line, what the heavy armor gives us is we get some nice resistances. There's also health recovery found here, resources when we take damage. There's also max health. There's like healing received, along with other bonuses and penalties that heavy armor provides us with. Heavy armor bonuses listed here, and heavy armor penalties listed here. Then we're going to go all the way down into the Undaunted skill line with our first passive here, because both of these are very important. With Undaunted Command, activating a synergy gives us 4% of our max health, stam, and magicka back whenever we activate it, which is quite nice because this will make sure we keep up our resources. So make sure to pop synergies whenever you have a chance, since it will keep us alive. Then for the Undaunted Metal, this will increase our resources, like our max health, stam, and magicka by 2%. Since we're only wearing just heavy armor, if we were to wear at least one heavy, one medium, and one light, we would see a bigger return of this of 6%, but we kind of just need to wear the heavy armor on this build just to give us better resistance, and where I feel more comfortable with our resistance. If I were to wear medium and light, we wouldn't see that resistance that I like. Now over into the support skill line here. We have Magicka Aid, which increases the Magicka recovery for each support ability slotted. Since we have Barrier, we will get that, and it just helps us have higher Magicka recovery, just kind of where to make it feel more comfortable. Now for the race, we are in the Imperial. You don't have to be the Imperial for this build. You can go with any other race if you so choose. Some other good choices here would be the Nords for more resistance if you would like to run a 5 heavy, 1 light, 1 medium setup on your armor for better undaunted passives. We can do an Argonian for resources back whenever you pop a potion, which is quite nice. But for me, I like the Imperial, and the reason I like to run the Imperial is we got a major max health increase by 2,000, increasing our max stamina by 2,000 as well. But for me, it's mostly the last passive here with Red Diamond. This will give us a reduction cost to all of our abilities by 6%, which gives us a better sustain on the Templar. Now, the very downside of the Imperial race is it's locked behind a paywall, so you will need to buy the Imperial pack in order to play the Imperial class, is the only downside of the Imperial. Now for Alchemy, passive, the most important passive in the game, I should say, is medicinal use. The duration of our potion effects lasts 30% longer, so pretty much what this means is at base, without having any medicinal use, our buffs on our potions only last 39 seconds, with the potion cooldown being 45 seconds. By getting medicinal use up there, pretty much this will allow us to have 100% uptime for the buffs that the potions provide us. So make sure to get medicinal use. It is the best passive in the game that can go on any build. Then over into provisioning, I would say let's go with Gourmet, just because since I am running a food buff on this guy, this will add 20 minutes to the duration of our food buff. That way we don't need to pop food as often, and that way we can save on material, so we don't need to craft as much food since we're not running out as much. Now, if you were to use a drink buff on this build, then I would say you need to go with Concierge, because this would add 20 minutes to the duration of your consumed drink over there. So let's go over into our gear, starting with our slottable items that we have. We are running the Crown Fortified Meal on this build, which just increases our max health, max magicka, and max stamina for 2.5 hours. I tend to go with this just because we get this from daily login, so it's kind of nice just to kind of use this. You can use other food buffs that give you all 3 resources, and if you really want to and so desire and have the gold or materials to do it, you can go with the very expensive one of the Bewitched Sugar Skulls, because this will give you more max health compared to the Crown Fortified Meal, and same with your max stamina, magicka, and this one also gives you a health recovery bonus as well. Now for potions on the build, I use Crown Tri Restoration Pots. As the same thing, you get these in daily login and you can stack up on them quite significantly, so this is what I tend to use, or any crafted tri pots work as well, because this will restore us 8,800 health, 7,500 magicka, and stamina as an Imperial, which we really like it to grant us major fortitude, major intellect, and major endurance, which increases our health recovery, magicka recovery, and stamina recovery by 30% for 4.3 seconds, which comes from our medicinal use passive there. Now, starting with our sword and board weapon, we are running the Void Bash set. So on our sword, we are running Absorb Stamina enchantment just to give us a little bit of stamina back whenever we do proc this enchantment. That way we kind of keep it up so we can block for a little bit longer duration. We also went with the Decisive trait here just to have a chance to gain 1 additional ultimate whenever we do get ultimate. Now, what does the Void Bash do for us? For the 2 pieces of Void Bash is when we deal damage with our Power Bash ability, we call the Void to ourselves for 2 seconds. Enemies within 12 meters are then immediately pulled to us. After the call ends, We then apply Major Main to enemies in the area for 10 seconds, reducing their damage down by 10%, and this can happen once every 13 seconds. So there's a couple things that we like here. One, the Major Main. By reducing the amount of damage that enemies do to us and group members, makes it a lot easier for us to survive as a tank. Damage to our allies makes it a lot easier for them, our healer, to heal them, and that way our healers don't have to work so hard to keep everybody alive. So all around we kind of help protect everybody. Now by doing this pull here, we don't have to work so hard and be casting a pull. So like over in our skills now, just by having our power slam here as our pull ability, you're going to get a lot of the ads pulled together. Yes, you're not going to get all of them, and you're going to have maybe one straggler out there, but how I figured out is this is a lot less of a cost with our power slam at 2000 stam to cast one time to get more majority of ads pulled together, instead of about almost 3000 stam for every single ad to pull in. Let's say if I had to pull in 5, that's a lot of stamina going out the door just to pull them all together. With a power slam, I'm going to get majority of them put together and make it a lot easier for us all around. For the shield, we are running a Max Magicka enchantment on the build with Sturdy trait, which Sturdy trait will be for every single trait on this build when it comes to the armor pieces. Now for the Ice Staff, we are running the Ice Staff of Powerful Assault with the Crusher enchantment just to reduce the target's physical and spell resistance by 1800 for 5 seconds. We did go with the Infused trait here just to increase the potency of the Crusher enchantment here by 25% and reduce the enchantment cooldown by 50%. Another very good option here that we can go with is the Charge trait. What the Charge trait does is it increases the chance to apply the status effect by 460%. So we have a lot larger chance to apply the status effect. If you go back over into my passives, I do talk about where to figure out what the Ice Staff procs. I'm not going to cover that here. But for the Powerful Assault set, for 2 pieces of it, we get 1100 max health. For 3 pieces, 1000 max stamina. 4 pieces, we get 124 weapon and spell damage. And for the 5-piece bonus is when we cast an assault ability while in combat, you and up to 5 group members within 10 meters gain 296 weapon and spell damage for 10 seconds. Now the 10 seconds is quite significant there for us because the skill that we are using for it, Echoing Vigor, lasts for 10 seconds. So when you know your Echoing Vigor is down and just done, then you know you can reapply it to give everybody more powerful assault. Granted, this is in a 15-meter radius instead. The Powerful Assault set is only in a 10, so there's a little bit of a buff of who your healing is actually getting it and who's not, but I find it more useful kind of for the kind of idea setup for this event tank set to be running Echoing Vigor to heal us and group members with this. Now over into the gear here for sets, we are running Sentinel of Rakujima with Max Magicka enchantment on this Sturdy trait, and for all of our larger pieces, that would be the head, chest, and legs. We do run the Max Magicka enchantment on all that, and stamina enchantment will be on the feet, hands, waist, and shoulders. And as you can see, everything is in the Sturdy trait just to reduce the cost of block, so that way we can block a lot longer because it's going to come in on our next set. But we're going to start with Sentinel of Rakujima. So what this does, it adds 4% healing done, so our heals are a little bit stronger, just kind of giving it that feel of kind of aim of scope what I was trying to do with this build on kind of setting it up for trial groups as an off tank or even 4-man dungeons just to be able to help the healers out and heal a little bit stronger. Now the 2-piece bonus is when we heal ourselves or an ally, we summon a Dwemer Spider that heals for 1000 health and restores 121 magicka and stamina to us and our allies within 5 meters every 1 second for 8 seconds. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. Yes, there's a little bit of a cooldown on it for the build, but how I've looked at it is if I end up healing just myself, I'm getting well-needed resources back to keep blocking for longer duration to help buff up our second set. On top of it too, if we end up healing other allies, this will stack with other Sentinel of Rakuzma sets if other healers are running it, or if a healer is running Symphony of Blades, then this will also stack with that one as well. So it's kind of a win all around is what I look at for this monster helmet. Now our final set that we are running is Ages of Gallenway. For 2 pieces of this, we get 1100 max health. 3 pieces, we get minor ages at all times, reducing our damage taken from dungeons, trials, and arena monsters by 5%. So this will help us survive quite significantly, especially on a Templar tank. 4 pieces, this will be 4% healing taken, so we get more healing done to us from this. That's pretty much what healing taken means. And then the 5-piece bonus is when we block, we grant empowerment to 11 allies within 15 meters for 3 seconds, increasing the damage of their light and heavy attacks by 40%. This effect can occur once every 2 seconds. So on this build, we now have 2 sets, Ages of Gallenways and Powerful Assault, that we are providing a lot of damage buff bonuses to the group. On top of it now too, as running Sentinel of Rakuzma, we are now giving out resources back as well with this set. On top of running the Powerful Assault, in order to cast it, we are running Echoing Vigor, or we are running Aggressive Warhorn, but Echoing Vigor is going to be the one that we're casting, and we can heal us and group members within 10-15 meters with this. So as you can kind of see how this build is kind of going, that we're kind of stacking a lot of things up on top of each other to provide a lot of healing on the build, a lot of resources gained, because even if you're standing in group as an off tank, you will be in trials. We can even throw Illumina Shards on us, and now allies can activate synergies, proc their Undaunted on top of restoring Magicka and stamina. So we are kind of this all around but yet very one-way driven tank. And just make sure you hold block on the build, because block is going to be very important because of the Gallenway set. Now for the jeweler, we are running Magicka recovery enchantments on this just to keep our Magicka recovery a lot higher, since we do have very high Magicka costing abilities. With the robust trait, because that's the standard trait that the Powerful Assault comes in. Now we are going to go over our champion points for our advanced tank here. With what we have slotted in the green tree, we have Treasure Hunter, just to increase the quality of items found in treasure chests. That way we get some nice loot. We have Rationer, just to add 10 minutes to the duration of any, or 30 minutes to the duration of any food or drink. That way we can have longer durations on that, so we don't need to pop as much foods or drinks, depending on which way you go. Then we have Liquid Efficiency, just to have ourselves have a 10% chance not to consume a potion or poison. Then last, we have Steed's Blessing, just to increase our movement speed out of combat by 20%. That way we can keep up with the group if they tend to speed run through content. Then over in the blue tree, what we have down in here is we have Ironclad. This reduces our damage taken by 10% from direct damage attacks. We have then Duelist Rebuff, reducing our damage taken from single target attacks by 10%. Enduring Resolve, reduce the damage taken by damage over time attacks by 10%. And then Unassailable, reduce the damage taken by area of effects by 10%. Then over into the red tree, what we have slotted on the build is Boundless Vitality. Grants 1,400 max health to have more health for better buffing some of our abilities and surviving a little bit better. Fortified for 1,700 armor, just to make sure our resistance hit cap, or where we like to hit them. Then we have down here Expert Evasion. Just whenever we use a roll dodge, it is free, because sometimes just roll dodging is a lot better than taking damage. But after we do that, we cannot consume this effect for another 30 seconds. At 31 seconds, we can consume it again for a free roll dodge. Then last, what we have is our Bracing Anchor, which reduces the amount of damage, or I should say increases the amount of damage we can block by 20%, but it also reduces our movement speed by 16% while in combat. So we're going to kind of move a little bit slower in combat for this setup, for our advanced tank setup. Now let's hop over into our beginner tank setup. So some of our stats on our character sheet does change. We are still using the Atronach, Boon, or Mundus Stone, but as you can see, our max magicka is now at 18,900. Max health is actually higher at 40,400. Max stamina at 22,500. With recoveries are just going to be slightly lower just because I'm on my back bar, but if I pop a potion, they're going to pop right back where they need to be. Skills on the build, I'd already talked about it in our skills section, but change our power bash over to deep slash here. Then on the back bar, instead of luminous shards, we then switch over to silver leash for our pull ability, since we don't have now void bash to do our pull. Silver leash will become our pull, and then explosive charge will become our range taunt because of the sets that we are running. And here we go with that. So we're going to start at the very top with the Crusader set. We did do absorb stamina enchantment, as a lot of these enchantments kind of stayed the same with the traits, except for some of them I will note them. But yes, we did absorb stamina enchantment just to keep our stamina up whenever we are doing damage, with the decisive trait just to get a little bit more ultimate back, as stated before. Now the Crusader set, what this does is it gives us a ton of weapon and spell damage, which is not really typical for a tank, but we actually really like it for the 5-piece bonus here. Is when we deal damage with a blink, charge, leap, teleport, or pull ability, we consecrate the ground beneath us for 10 seconds and gain a damage shield that absorbs 4,300 damage for 6 seconds. So yes, we're going to kind of stack now our damage shields with Radiant Ward, and this we can actually get a quite significantly large damage shield for a beginner there. And then for every 2 seconds, us and up to 11 group members in the area gain minor courage for 12 seconds there. So minor courage will increase the group's weapon and spell damage by a decent amount, a little less than a powerful assault, but it's still quite decent there. And this effect can occur once every 20 seconds, and the damage shield is scaled off the higher of our weapon and spell damage. So the higher our weapon and spell damage is, the bigger the damage shield is. But this set will kind of stack with our other set that we'll talk about later. Then for the shield here, we want max stamina enchantment just to give us a little bit better stamina pool with the sturdy trait. And the sturdy trait is going to be kind of followed through as our advanced tank setup, kind of the same way in this one as well. For the ice staff, we did their crusher enchantment again with the infused trait. Again, if you want to change the infused to charge, you can use the charge trait here. It worked very well. Now for the helmet, we are running the Ebon helmet with the multi-effect enchantment. The multi-effect enchantment we end up using on our head, chest, and legs, just to kind of give us a bigger overall magic pool, health pool, and stamina pool, just to kind of give us the benefits that we want. If you don't want to use a multi-effect enchantment, then I highly recommend either then using our magicka enchantment here or using a stamina enchantment here. Health sitting at 40,000, you should be fairly fine there. Or if you want to have a lot higher health, then you could put health here. But we went with the Ebon helmet here because we were looking for a 2-piece bonus, and Ebon was a good one just to give us a 1,100 max health for 2-piece bonus, since we are wearing it on the head and shoulders. Do you need to run Ebon? No, you can actually run Plague Doctors found over in Deshaun if you so desire, if you don't want to end up going with the Crypt of Hearts. Again, a lot of how this beginner build is actually set up is a lot of this is actually found in base game. The Crusader set is found in Vollenfell, so it's a base dungeon that we can get in the game. Again, Ebon is found in Crypt of Hearts. I like that. And our other set is the Tormentor, which is in Bandit Cells 1 and 2. Crypt of Hearts 1 and 2 as well for Ebon. Now, why I went Ebon over the Plague Doctor is because Ebon is going to be one of those sets that you're actually going to want to get for your tank as a beginner, because when you all of a sudden go into trials to get set up for our advanced tank setup, Evan is kind of one of those things where we're gonna, as the 5-piece bonus states there, increase the max health by 965 for us and up to 11 group members within 28 meters. It's just kind of one of those benefits to keep everybody alive when you're doing those trials. So it's a nice little buff to give everybody. Now we're gonna go with the Tormentor here for our 5-piece bonus. For 2 pieces, this gives us 1,100 max health. For the 3 and 4-piece bonus, we get 4% healing taken. For the 5-piece bonus is when we deal direct damage with a charge, leap, teleport, or pull ability, we gain 3,500 physical and spell resistance, and we taunt the enemies to attack us for 15 seconds. So what we are using as our skill here, this is where explosive charge comes into play. Since it's a charge, we will proc Tormentor. We will also be proccing Crusader, since that one is also based off of a charge. And since this has a 6-meter radius, this will become an AoE taunt effect. It is one of the only AoE taunt abilities in the game if you are using the Tormentor set. So it's kind of quite nice as a beginner thing to make sure you're kind of controlling all your ads for you. Yes, you may not get them all, but then that's why we end up using Silver Leash, is to pull those stragglers in, because this will become a pull, and since it's a pull, it will also proc our Tormentor set, since this says or pull ability gain physical and spell resistance and taunt enemies to attack us for 15 seconds. And there is no cooldown on it, so pull all you want, you're going to be taunting those enemies. So for enchantment on the feet, hands, waist, and shoulders, we want max magic enchantment, since I didn't state that before, since I just stated the multi-effect enchantments, which will be a prismatic glyph, if you're curious about that. Now for the accessories, we went Magicka Recovery enchantment on all 3 with the robust trait, because the Crusader set is a medium armor set, so it will naturally come in the robust trait. So that way you don't have to reconstruct it like I did here for it. Now champion points on the beginner tank setup. I just was basing my champion points off of only using 100 in each tree, which would be level 300 CP. For the green tree, this is how the setup I had 10 in Glided Finger, 10 in Fortune Favor, 15 in Wanderer, 10 in Steadfast Enchantments, 50 into Treasure Hunter, and then I put 5 into Steed's Blessing just to increase our movement speed a little bit. Over into the blue tree, we have 10 into Tireless Discipline, just to give us a little bit more max stamina. Then a lot of it is in here with Ironclad, Quick Recovery, Hardy, 20 into Preparation, because this will reduce a lot of your damage taken from non-player attacks by 10%, which is a lot stronger buff compared to our slottables, but we also get all of our slottables, so that way we can get those taken care of, and also reduce a lot of indirect things. Then we have 10 into Elemental Ages. Again, we have 10 into Duelist Rebuff, 10 into Enduring Resolve, 10 into Unassailable. Then over into the red tree, we have 34 points into Boundless Vitality, just to give us a nice health pool, 30 into Fortified, just to give us a little bit more armor resistance. As a beginner tank, it's going to be quite nice. We got 10 into Tireless Guardian, and we got 6 into Nimble Protector, or Protection, or yeah, it is Protector, my bad, I apologize. And then Bracing Anchors, we have 20 points here just to increase the amount of damage we can block by 8%. Now why I decided to go here with our slottable instead of putting, let's say, Fortification here, is because we get more bang for our buck by putting 20 points into Bracing Anchor, because that's 8%. This would only give us a total of 4% if we were adding more points there. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing. This will help in the YouTube algorithm for other people to find it. If you would like to stay up to date with more of my videos, smash that bell icon to be notified when I make a new video. If you want to come and hang out with me live, follow me over at Twitch. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section down below, or you can message me over on Twitter. Thank you all for watching. I hope to see you in game or in the next video.